So I think everyone's making their way from the waiting room into the webinar room. So we'll just give it a few moments while everyone joins us. So we're just going to be a little silent for a moment until everyone's got their place in the webinar room. You see you all joining us, which is great. Some good numbers here. Okay, I think we're just nearly coming up by my watch 2 o'clock, and we're just going to get the slides to appear, and then I think we'll make a start. So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anne Vesey. I'm the marketing lead at the EDA, and welcome to our webinar, Starting Your ETIM Journey. Now, let me just make some introductions. We have today, there's a picture of me, and I'll be handing over very shortly after doing some introductory slides to Richard Appleton, who is the General Manager of EDA Data Services. Just before we talk about what you're going to hear about today, just a couple of housekeeping measures. Now, you can hear us, hopefully, but we can't hear you. But the way to ask questions, and we'll be taking questions at the end, if you look to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a grey question mark. And if you'd like to type your question, we will take as many questions as we possibly can towards the end of the session. So please feel free to add a comment or ask a question. So let's just recap on what we're going to hear about today. So primarily, today's webinar is aimed at the manufacturer, but I know we have some wholesalers on the call as well today. So we hope this gives you really useful information and a viewpoint if you're a wholesaler, but we're really talking to the manufacturer today about how, what ETIM is. It's a very practical session. So we'll be talking about ETIM and its role in e-commerce. I'll then be handing over to Richard, and he'll be talking about ETIM, how it is structured. We'll be giving you a real-life tour of the classification management tool. We'll be talking about how to create and store your ETIM data and how to send ETIM data to your customers. And then we'll be taking questions at the end, and we'll cover as many questions as we possibly can in this session. If we don't happen to get to your question today, we will happily reconvene in another a Teams call or a conversation with the wider EDA team to get those questions answered. So without further ado, I'm going to make a start. And it's my job really is to talk to you about ETIM and what it can do for you as a business and a manufacturer. But really, let's just recap on what has brought you here today. You may, as a manufacturer, have had a request for ETIM-ready data from a wholesaler. You may have recognised the strategic importance of your product data. I think, well, okay, this is a great opportunity for us as a manufacturer. You may have just heard of ETIM, but have more questions than answers. Maybe a mix of all of those three and maybe more, but whatever the reason is, we're very glad you're here. So I just want to, before I hand over to Richard, just set the scene for you about ETIM, why it is important and its role in e-commerce. So if you think about your products as a manufacturer, your products solve a problem. And as a manufacturer selling into the wholesaler, you rely on a wholesaler's capabilities and the channels to market your products to the customer. So the wholesaler is thinking, how can I help my customer, the electrician and contractor? How can I help them find the right product for their needs? And what information my ideal target customers need? What are they looking for? And to get that information out to the contractor electrician, the wholesaler is using digital, multi-channel sales strategies. That could be an e-commerce platform for which there are search and filtering capabilities, so the customer can get, really fine-tune the information thereafter. They will also be using search engine optimization strategies. And all of that data, all of that is dependent on rich product data. And where will wholesalers get that from? I'm just going to pause there. We've got a couple of questions. Yes, somebody's asked, do we have access to the slides after the meeting? Yes, you will. And somebody's unable to hear any sound. And I wonder if I could ask my colleague Rose, who is also listening in, to see if she can help, because you really need to be using Chrome as your browser to get the best experience for this. So let's just pick up. So yes, this will be recorded, and we'll be sending that out afterwards. So back to the point in question. All of that expertise to get your products in front of the contracted electrician is dependent on rich product data. But where will wholesalers get that from? You, as the manufacturer, you're the guardian of your product data. And I want to just remind you here, if you haven't already found your way, to two very important documents that the EDA has produced. And the first is a free white paper, very easy to read, but a really important 7-point plan for manufacturers to help you get started in developing your product data strategy. So it is designed to support your marketing business objectives, and you can download it from the EDA website. It's under the Publication Support and Resources section. If anyone would like to call me after if they can't find it, I'll point you in the right direction. But we strongly recommend you download that and have a look at it. And there is also one for the wholesaler. And this is one that helps you understand the wholesaler's point of view. And I think they're really good read together, because each party, whether you're a manufacturer or a wholesaler, it will help you understand the other organisation's viewpoint and the information that that business needs. And I just want to hone in really closely in that what's on the front cover. I just want to say here, this honeycomb diagram is a really good illustration of all the different types of product data. And as the honeycomb diagram shows, and we'll be talking about other categories of data later on in the presentation, and you'll hear mentions of manufacturer master data, you'll hear mentions of digital assets, but it is today the technical attributes that we're talking about. And ETIM has a significant part to play in classifying, getting that product data in a really organised format. Before we go any further, there's just some really important facts that I want you to take away from this, this presentation today. ETIM, it is an international data model. If you prefer a classification or a structure, it is not in itself a database. It is a way of classifying your products. ETIM applies only to the technical information about any product. It isn't to do with the marketing information. It's not to do with the pricing. It is only the technical information. I'll illustrate that in a couple of slides. And the third important point is that it exists to help B2B, business-to-business customers further along the supply chain find and choose your products. So let's just take a look at this. Here's a laptop. So if you had no information about this laptop other than a picture of it and a price, I would suggest that none of us would be prepared to part with our cash, because we don't know what it does. We have absolutely no idea if it will meet our needs, if it will fulfill the issues we want. But if we were to provide all the technical specification, then as a manufacturer of that laptop, we're in a fighting chance of getting a sale, because people have the information about the performance, about the capabilities, about the functionality of that product. And that really, if you replace the laptop with an electrotechnical product in our sector, that is really what we're trying to demonstrate here today. So let's just look at the benefits of ETIM to you as a manufacturer. So you retain control over your product data. You're not leaving it to other people to second guess the important technical specification further on down the supply chain. It's about streamlining workload, because you can provide a single format to many wholesalers, and Richard will go on to explain how that works. So we're saving you time, we're saving you effort. There is an increased chance of your products being found and selected, because people have the technical information, the specification that they need to make a purchasing decision. And ultimately, that means an enhanced customer experience, because fewer products are returned, because people have found the right product for the right job for the first time round. So I hope you've understood there. That gives you a bit of some foundation information about ETIM, what it is, why it's important, and why it's particularly important for you as a manufacturer, as well as right along the supply chain. So now I'm going to hand over to Richard, who is going to take a bit of a deep dive now into how ETIM is structured and how you can, some really practical hints and tips and ideas for how you can start to classify your product data. Off you go, Richard.
Right, thank you, Anne, and good afternoon, everybody. Right, okay, so as Anne has explained, ETIM is not a database. ETIM is a data model or a data structure. So as a manufacturer, before you can create ETIM formatted data for your products, you need to understand how that structure works. So that's what we're going to have a look at first. So the heart of the ETIM structure is something called the ETIM class. So a class really just identifies a type of product. So in our example here, we've got a compact fluorescent lamp with ballast. So that's a type of product, but other types of product might be a socket outlet, or it might be an anchor bolt, or topically, it might be a face mask. Any of those things would have its own ETIM class. The class is identified by a code, and you'll see under where it says compact fluorescent lamp, there is a code which begins with EC, the ETIM class, and then there is a unique numeric number which identifies that class. So that number is what systems use to identify the ETIM class, and that is linked to its name in English text. The class code is also linked to a series of synonyms, as we see over here on the right. You could alternatively think of those as keywords. So those are other words that people might use to search for that particular type of product. Very importantly, as I've said, the class code is linked to the class name in English. It's also linked to the class name in many other languages. ETIM is used in upwards of 20 different countries now. Obviously, there are many different languages being used in those countries. So this code is linked to the translation for compact fluorescent lamp in French, German, Italian, Russian, Hungarian, Lithuanian, the list goes on. And that's fantastically useful for any manufacturer who might be exporting products, because you can create ETIM data in the UK and then send it to distributors in other countries, and their systems will automatically translate into their local language. Anyway, coming back to the jobs that you have to do as a manufacturer to create your ETIM data, the first thing that you will have to do is assign each of the products in your range to the appropriate ETIM class. Okay, the second key element of the ETIM model or structure is the feature. So by assigning a product to an ETIM class, it is automatically linked to a predefined set of features. Our example here shows 4, but in practice, the number of features can vary enormously depending on the complexity of the product. It might be anything between 5 and 50 plus. I mean, a lamp could be a significant number of features in reality. And these features generally are the most important features that are required to find, select, or specify that type of product. So, as we say, our example here gives such things as the lamp cap, the power, the frequency, whether or not it's dimmable. Typically, the sorts of things that a buyer might want to search or filter on, when he's looking for those products on a website. Again, everything's driven by an underlying coding structure, and the ETIM features are identified by a numeric code which is begun with an EF prefix. So to complete your ETIM data, you will need to assign a value to each of the features relevant to the type of product that you're dealing with. So looking on the slide now, you'll see that features actually fall into 4 different types. And we've got an example here of each type. So the first type of feature is an alphanumeric feature, which means that the values are obviously a piece of alphanumeric text. But it's not possible to just add any text. What you will need to do is select an allowable value from a set of predefined allowable values, which could appear in a pick list. So that's an alphanumeric feature. In our example here, we've got the lamp cap and we've got B15D as an example of an allowable value, which would be identified by another code, in this case beginning EV. The second type of feature is a numeric feature, in this case lamp power as our example, and in the case of a numeric feature, the value that you will assign will be a number, and it could be any number. You can put in whatever you want. Possibly the numeric feature will be associated with a unit. So in this case, our lamp power 15 is associated with watts, so we're saying 15 watts. The third type of feature is a range feature. This is similar to a numeric feature in that the values that you will assign will be numbers, but in this case there'll be 2 numbers, an upper and a lower limit to the range. And again, a range feature can have a unit associated with it, although it doesn't have to. It depends on what the feature is. And then the final type of feature is a logic feature, and a logic feature simply has a value of yes or no, or true or false, as it would be in to the computer system. So in this case, the feature is dimmable. There are 2 options, yes or no, and it's as simple as that. So that's really the basic structure of ETIM. So it's about the classes, but the classes are not an end in themselves. The classes are there as a tool to group products that share similar features, so you can assign values to those features. And by your doing that within the ETIM structure means that the way everybody assigns values to their features are consistent. So just finally on this little group of slides, there is also an element to the ETIM structure called the product group we see up here at the top, which is identified by a code beginning EG. So we've got a group for lamps. This is really just for navigational purposes. It's not a particularly important part of the structure as a whole. Okay, so that's one way of looking at the ETIM structure. Another way that you can visualize ETIM would be by thinking of the products in a spreadsheet. So if you were going to start to assign ETIM values to your products, you might set out all the products that belong to a particular ETIM class in one worksheet in Excel, and then set up a column for each of the different features that was associated with that class. So that's what we've done here. So this is just another way of visualizing how you might apply the ETIM data. And in this case, we've got an alphanumeric class for lamp shape, where I've put in a pick list into the Excel sheet of the allowable values. So once that spreadsheet was filled in, it would start to look something like this. And I think that gives you quite a nice sort of visualization of how powerful this data could be when take that data structured in that way, and how that could be used in a website. So, and really, I suppose that that exemplifies what ETIM is really for. It's a structure for assigning product classes and features which enables web designers to build the sort of powerful searches and filters which a B2B website really needs, so that buyers can find products that match a particular need or specification. Okay, so the final slide in this section, I'm just going to talk briefly about the ETIM releases. So ETIM as a structure has been in existence for quite a number of years now, and obviously it's grown as new types of product have been brought under the ETIM banner, and as new types of product have been released. So there's a constant series of changes being applied to it. And those changes have to go through a very strict governance process, a strict approval process to maintain the integrity of the standard. So rather than it constantly changing all the time, for most people, the way that this is managed is that there will be a full release of the ETIM standard, which you can use, which is released every 2 to 3 years. So the current version of ETIM that most people are using is ETIM release 7, which was released coming up for 3 years ago now. And indeed ETIM 8 is due in September of this year. An alternative is that manufacturers can use the so-called ETIM dynamics, so they can have access to the most recent full version of ETIM plus any approved changes that have taken place since the last release, because those approved changes will be built into the next full release, so they get kind of advance warning of those, if you like. Now, all EDA members and affiliates are by default ETIM UK members, and as such you are free to propose enhancements or changes to the ETIM structure yourself. And the way you would do that is to approach us as ETIM UK, or the electrical sector lead body for ETIM UK. Then we would discuss those with you, and then we would, if we all agree that that's the right thing to do, we would then submit those to ETIM International so that they can go through the the governance process. Okay, so that's a little bit about the structure of ETIM, but where do you find the information you need to know about what classes are available, or what features are associated with those classes, and so on? So the go-to resource for all ETIM information is an online tool called the Classification Management Tool, or CMT, which can be accessed via the ETIM International website. The URL is shown here. So, and this is where you would find it on the ETIM International website. So we're going to take a quick tour of the Classification Management Tool. I'm just going to show you around it. So this is the slightly risky bit of the presentation, because I'm going to attempt to change screens. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed and hope that this works. Okay, so you should now be seeing the front screen of the Classification Management Tool. So we're just going to take a quick 5-minute whistle-stop tour of this, because you will need to know your way around it if you're going to start creating deep ETIM data for your products. You can get a login for this if you're an ETIM UK member. So if you're an EDA member, you can approach us and we will register you as a user on this tool. You don't actually have to log in to see everything in here, but some of the features are restricted to people who have logged in, so it makes sense to do that. So I'm going to look for the data again that we've just seen around the compact fluorescent lamp. So the first thing I'm going to do here is select classes, ETIM classes, and that takes me into the main CMT screen. The system's already logged me in, so I can do more or less what I want in here. So I'm going to go through a few stages to get to where I need to be. So the first thing I'm going to do is select my language, and you might think, well, it says ETIM English up there, so you're in English, that's fine. But if you look down the list of all the available languages, there are actually two versions of English. We've got ETIM English and we've got English UK. And English UK is the one that we want. ETIM English is English, obviously, but it's the system language effectively. So it's the version of English that's been created by translating some of the original ETIM work that was done in Dutch or German or whatever. And it often doesn't really use the terminology that we would use in the UK market. So what we're interested in is English UK. So that's what I would suggest you pick first. Okay, so moving over here onto the left, you can see a drop down for release. So I was talking about the different ETIM releases a few moments ago. So if we click on here, we can pick which ETIM release we want to view. So as I said earlier, we'll pick ETIM 7, which is the one that most people are using. And as you start to pick these filters, you'll see there's a breadcrumb trail appears along the top here, so you can view and edit the filters that you've chosen. Okay, so I've selected ETIM 7. I could narrow this down further by picking a sector. So ETIM operates in the electrotechnical sector, which is our interest, but it's also used for building materials, shipbuilding products, HVAC and plumbing products and tools, hardware and site supplies. So there's a number of different sectors, and if we want to reduce the list down further, I can click on electrotechnical. So then I'm going to search for a class. So if I'm looking for compact fluorescent lamp, we've got the class text box up the top here. So I'll just start to type in compact, and you'll see that the system then comes up with a set of suggestions, which is very useful because I don't have to type the whole thing in. I can just start to type, and then as soon as I see the one I want come up, I can just click on it. And there we are. So we have our ETIM class for compact fluorescent lamps. So what do we see here? Well, we've got the class name in English UK. We have the class code EC000819, and we see that, as we said earlier, it belongs to a higher group called lamps. Down here on below, we can see a list of all of the features. Remember that they begin with an EF code, so all of the features that are linked to the class for compact fluorescent lamps with an inbuilt ballast in this instance. So there's a whole list of them down here, and as you can see that although I showed 4 on my previous slides, there are actually rather a lot more of them in reality. Over here on, so just further over, so we have the feature name, we have the type, so numeric, range, alphanumeric designates the type of feature, and the unit. If you remember, I said that numeric and range features can be associated with a unit. Alphanumeric features have a pick list of allowable values associated with them. So come back to our lamp cap that we looked at earlier, and here's a list of a whole series of allowable values that can be linked to that ETIM feature. So that's essentially what you will see on the classification management tool. There's a number of other pieces of information here that are useful to see. One of them is the reference products. We can click on here, and there are associated with most classes, there are a number of reference products linked to that, which help to, if there's doubt, decide which class a product should be assigned to. One of our jobs within the UK is to add more UK specific reference products to this, so that it's clearer for people in our market what we're looking at. Okay, so that's our compact fluorescent lamp. So we're just going to go back a stage. I'll just get rid of all those filters. Another way you can look things up is by using the group. So you'll remember that we had a higher level group called lamps. So if under group I search for lamps, and again I've got a series of prompts there, so I select lamps, and then what that gives me is a list of all the classes for different types of lamp. So if you're a lamp manufacturer, that's probably your starting point. They're sorted by code order, so if you click on here you can sort them by alphabetical order, which is a bit easier to see. So that's another way of navigating. There's also some export options here. So if you're logged in, you can export all the details relating to a particular class, which can be quite useful. Okay, so that's a quick tour around the classification management tool, and obviously if anybody is ETIMizing their data and wants more input or training in that, then we can provide that. So I'm now going to attempt to go back to the presentation. Fingers crossed. And I think that's worked. I'm sure.
Yes, it has, yeah,
thank you. That's good.
That's good. That's good. Thank you.
It looks good from here.
Good.
Right. Okay. So moving on. So now you understand a little bit more about the ETIM model, and you know where to find information about ETIM. So the next stage we're going to look at is a little bit more about how to create and store your ETIM data. So we know that some wholesalers are asking for ETIM data, and at the outset they're simply asking for details of the ETIM class. So what class, ETIM class, does each of your products fit into, without at the first stage requiring details about all the features and values associated with them. So if that's what you're being asked for, then of course it's relatively easy to put that data together in a spreadsheet, as we can see here. So we can just, you would just extract a list of all your products into a spreadsheet with the part numbers and descriptions and so on and so forth, that comes out of your, maybe out of an ERP system or whatever. And then using the classification management tool that we've just looked at, you can search around and find the appropriate class code and class name for each of those products. So that's one way of creating the ETIM data. Now, a spreadsheet obviously has several advantages as a way of managing data. It's low cost. It can be useful just if you're doing a simple job, and lots of people know how to use it. But it can be challenging to try to manage the full ETIM data, the features and the values, using a spreadsheet alone. It's really not designed for the job of dealing with those sort of multi-layered data structures. So creating ETIM data, if you're going to go the full hog and create the features or create the values associated with each feature, and if that's what your distributors are asking for, then that's likely to be part of a broader product data strategy. And what we would recommend is that manufacturers equip themselves with a PIM, or a product information management system. And in the digital world, product data is now so important as part of your sort of engagement strategy with your customers, that product data management strategy and a PIM system to house or serve as the central housing for your product data is almost becoming essential, really. A PIM system has numerous advantages. For a start, it can be pre-populated with the ETIM structure, and there are a number of PIM systems available which are linked to the ETIM international, well, to the CMT, and regularly download updates to the structure. So you've got it all built into your system already. So all the pick lists and that kind of thing are pre-built for you. And as I said, it's automatically updated with new ETIM releases then. But the other thing about a PIM system is that you won't just use it for managing ETIM data. You can use it for managing all the other types of product data. So your master data, you know, all your product descriptions in e-commerce friendly form, BIM data possibly. If you have an associated digital asset management system, you can use it to manage all your product pictures, data sheets, and the links to those. So all of that can be done within a PIM system. And the PIM will also have flexible options for exporting data, you know, depending on what your customers' needs are. So I think that's very much the way that we would think that most manufacturers should be going, and we know that many are going down that route. So in simple terms, if you install your PIM, there are a number of perhaps five simple steps to ETIM readiness or creating ETIM ready data. So step one, install a PIM system with ETIM capability. Step two will be to import your basic product data. So this is whatever you've got available in your ERP systems, or perhaps in the content management tool sitting behind your website. So your part numbers, EAN codes, product descriptions, and so forth. Step three will be to assign an ETIM class to each of your products, as we talked about earlier. And then step four, which is probably the one which requires the most work, is to enter or select the correct ETIM values for the features related to each product. And then finally, as and when required, you can export and distribute your ETIM data in the required format to your customers, which is what we come on to next. Okay, so by this stage, you will have created your ETIM data, and that's all very well, but you're creating it for a purpose, which is generally because your customers, distributors, or whatever are asking for it. So having created it, you need to think about how you're going to distribute it, or syndicate it is the buzzword, how you're going to send it to your customers. And as always, there's a number of choices for how you might do this. Coming back to our simple example of if you're just being asked to provide ETIM codes, or perhaps if you're only dealing with a very small range of products, it's possible to create the data and transfer it in a spreadsheet, an Excel file, or Excel workbook. And most PIM systems can export Excel files in. You can set up the format so you can choose what columns of information to export and so forth. So that's one option. It's a relatively simple option, and obviously for many of the recipients, that's the easiest option to deal with. But using a spreadsheet to distribute data has similar limitations to using the spreadsheet to create the data in the first place, and it's not very satisfactory for distributing the ETIM feature and value data, or certainly not for any extensive range of products. So another option is to use a file format called BMECAT. Now, BMECAT is an international standard for an XML file format, which is specifically designed for the exchange of product catalog data. And many PIM systems, the majority of PIM systems, have the ability to export data in BMECAT format. And similarly, if the distributor or wholesaler, the recipient of the data, is also loading data into a PIM, as they most likely are, then their system will have the ability to import that. So it's a very powerful option, because BMECAT includes the provision for transferring the full ETIM structure. So all of your, not just the classes, but the features and the values can all be transferred from one party to another using the BMECAT format. And BMECAT transfers the ETIM codes. So remember, I said earlier that you can use ETIM, for example, to supply data to a distributor in another country. Well, this is what you'd use. You'd supply that data in a BMECAT format, and that would transfer the codes into the customer's PIM system, and then the customer's PIM system would translate all the names of the classes and the names of the features into whatever their local language was. Another benefit of using BMECAT is that it can be used for transferring all sorts of other types of data as well. So within the BMECAT format, there's provision for product descriptions of varying types and sizes. So what we would call the master data, the part numbers, the EAN codes, etc., etc. There's provision for links to digital assets, so pictures, data sheets, and so on. There's provision for price data, for logistics data like package sizes and weights, and so on. So it's a very powerful way to distribute data from point to point, from one supplier to one customer. But you still got to, if you're using BMECAT, you've still got to provide a separate file to each customer. So that takes us on to the third option. So the third option, which is increasingly popular, not just in the UK, but globally, is to upload the ETIM data into an industry-owned data pool. So a repository of data into which manufacturers can import their data, and they might do some verification on the data in doing that. And then wholesalers can access that data pool as and when they choose, filter the data that's in there, so they can pick which manufacturers or ranges they want, or when the data was last updated. They can filter on all sorts of criteria, and then download that in their chosen format into their own PIM system. So that's a very powerful way to distribute the data. It's also a very efficient way from the supplier's point of view. Many countries now have these industry-owned data pools. It's very much the trend, and as we see on the picture here, there are data pools in the electrical and in the HVAC sectors in operation right across Europe. So we've got 2BA in the Netherlands, Metal in Italy, SEG is in Sweden, and there are others in development as well. There's one in Germany, I believe, being developed currently. In the UK, we have developed EDA as our industry data pool for the electrical sector, and into EDA, manufacturers can load their ETIM data along with master data such as product descriptions, part numbers and marketing data, and their digital assets such as their images for download by wholesalers. And here's a just picture or illustration of how that might work. So manufacturers' product data can be accessed by wholesalers from eData, and this is primarily about data that's going to be used in their website. So it's most likely to be pulled down from eData and loaded into a PIM system. It will be matched with and supplemented with other customer specific data, or data that's specific to that wholesaler, so prices, stock details, customer details, and so forth, all of which they could source from their ERP system, and perhaps further embellished with, you know, to bring out their own sort of unique selling points, or add some search engine optimization into that within the PIM system. So, you know, all of that together would provide, you know, very powerful e-commerce friendly data to power their websites, and you know, that could be a central resource which could feed a number of websites. So, you know, those wholesalers who are more advanced in their digital journey may have more than one. So they might have a B2B site for their account customers, a B2C site for, you know, casual customers, and perhaps a number of punch out sites for specific large industrial customers or something like that. And all of that could be fed from this, you know, PIM system, which in turn is being fed by EDA, which in turn is where you as the manufacturer are uploading your ETIM data. So finally, how would that, or how might that appear on a wholesaler's website? It could appear in all sorts of different ways, but depending on the design of the site. But as an example, back to our ETIM data for our compact fluorescent lamp, or our lamp of some description, and you can see here the kind of thing that the wholesaler's web designer might be doing with that data. So, you know, we've got a whole series of filters built down here. This is just a mock-up, as you can tell, but very much the same sort of experience that B2B buyers now expect as in their, you know, B2B buying journey, as they would get in a, you know, when they're buying products for themselves through a consumer website. And that's, you know, increasingly what buyers now expect. So ETIM can give them that. And then finally, other data that supplements that. If you, as the wholesaler, getting their data through a portal like eData, they would have the images and the, you know, e-commerce friendly product descriptions and that kind of thing, can all come through that source as well. So it's very much a complete source of data for the wholesaler, and from the manufacturer's point of view, because you're creating that, gives you much more control over how your products and your brands are presented. So that's I hope that was useful to everybody. That's the end of my section here. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm going to hand back to Anne to wrap things up and go through the questions.
Thanks, Richard. That was really good. Thank you. So thanks, everybody. I just wanted to introduce you to a couple more people who I think Javier has been answering the question, which is fantastic, but there's more than Richard in terms of expertise in all things data. And I just wanted to introduce you to a couple of other people. Javier, who has joined us early this year as a data and onboarding manager, and also to Kira Greenwood, who you won't have seen today, but a huge thanks, because she's been running all the logistics and setting up today's webinar. So it's thanks to Kira for making sure you can hear us, and we know that we're talking to a group of interested people, which is fantastic. So now is the time to get some questions, and we've got a couple of questions already, and I've got one that was sent to us in advance, Richard. I think the first one, I think Javier, you did answer this, I think, and Javier's jumped in and also mentioned this, but is it always right to start at the very top of the tree and always search for the group, or is it good to zoom in once you know the structure of ETIM? Can you jump in at the class level and find your way through? Do you have a bit of advice on that, Richard?
Yes, I think probably once you get used to navigating your way around the CMT, I would tend to go straight in at class level, because if when you search for a class in that box, it's searching not just for the class name that you're typing in, but also all those synonyms as well. So there's a very good chance that just by starting to type what you think the class name will be, that you're going to find it. Where the groups come in is if you're a manufacturer that works with a number of related classes. So if you're a lamps manufacturer, then it's great to be able to type in lamps into the group and see all of the lamps classes side by side. But I think in other cases that probably is less satisfactory, and it's easier just to do the keyword searches for the classes.
Okay, thank you. Now we've got another question here about an ETIM enabled PIM and how that links to look-ins and pricing information. I'm afraid I've got to go back to you on this one, Richard. How does that work?
Well, I'm not quite sure. The question can mean a number of different things. I mean, if a manufacturer is equipped with a PIM system, ETIM enabled or not, although we assume it will be, then you can export data from that PIM. You can manage all of your data locally within that PIM system and export it for whoever you need to send data to. So if you're currently creating data in spreadsheets and so forth to send to lock-ins, then if you have a PIM system, then that will be an easier way of sending data to lock-ins than what you're currently using. Okay,
that's good. Thank you very much. And we have another question about the different ETIM versions, and I have a question also about that was sent to us earlier. And this one is, how will the different ETIM versions be handled within EDATA, the data pool? Can it cope with different versions? We're on the cusp of, in September, we're seeing 8.0. What if manufacturers are using different versions?
The answer is that it will be able to. We're working on this at the moment. It is, from a database point of view, it's a little tricky to sort of design it in a way which is going to also be user-friendly from the user's point of view. But the goal is that a manufacturer will be able to upload data using, most likely the manufacturer will be a version or two further ahead than the wholesaler. I mean, that's how it tends to fall where ETIM is used in other countries. So a manufacturer could upload data in ETIM 8 or ETIM Dynamic, and then the wholesaler could choose to export ETIM 7 and possibly ETIM 6. I mean, there is going to be a cut-off point. We're not going to be able to go back indefinitely. We may have to, say to people that we're going to cut off support for, say, ETIM 6 after a period of time. But by that point, everybody hopefully should have upgraded. But yeah, we are aware. I see Mark's asked this question, and we are aware that we need to be able to cope with at least the current version, the previous version, and ETIM Dynamic simultaneously. Okay.
We had a question sent to us ahead of time, and we're on the cusp of, as we said, ETIM 8. And just it's worth re-emphasising here, there's no free text fields allowed in ETIM. So if you are a manufacturer and you cannot find, because you maybe have developed a new product, or you cannot find the value or that you're looking for, at one point in the year, is it a constant change? Is it constantly evolving, or are there certain points in the year when you can make a request for change to actually change the ETIM model for the UK?
It's constantly evolving. So you can request a change at any time, with the caveat that in the lead up to a full release, like at the moment, the whole thing's in lockdown because we're getting ready or we're going through the process of assessing and approving all the requests for change ready for ETIM 8, because inevitably you do get a build up at the last minute. But in normal times, you can request a change whenever you want. And it then goes into as we talked about, the governance process. And there is a time lag, because it has to be approved by ETIM International from the structural point of view, to make sure that it conforms with the ETIM classification guidelines. And then it's published on a sort of approval mechanism where other ETIM users, and this will be open to any of you, can review pending changes and make comments, and request other changes related to them perhaps. before it's finally approved. But when it's finally approved, it will be then published as part of ETIM Dynamic. So this is why we say that manufacturers are often best using ETIM Dynamic, because you will then have access to the very latest changes. So you can get all your data ready using the latest version, and then that will effectively mean that it's up to date to the next full version when that's released.
And how long does it take for we just another question on the same theme? How long is the gestation time? So how long does it take for a change to become effective? And do some changes get rejected?
Some do. Some get rejected. Yes. Yeah. I've had some rejected myself, but that's usually because I haven't structured them quite right, and we have to then sort of go back round the loop to put them together properly. So yeah, the ETIM marker, ETIM International, is very helpful with that. Then obviously there's a time where we need to discuss it in the UK, and it may be that if you as a UK manufacturer suggest a change relating to UK type products to us at ETIM UK, we might think it's best to talk to a number of other UK manufacturers of similar products first. In fact, unless it was a very minor change, if it was anything of any significance, I think that's what we will do. And then when we are all confident that from our market's perspective that this is the right thing to do, then it will go into the ETIM change process. And it normally there's normally a couple of weeks lag then for the ETIM International guys to have a look at it, and then it goes into this, as I say, this sort of discussion phase, and that lasts 60 days. So that's fixed. So it's always going to be sat in this limbo period where people can have a look and make comments before it's finally approved and published.
But the beauty of ETIM is that change will cascade out across all the member countries. Is that right, Richard?
That's correct.
You do it once in the UK and it's done for you in every other market you might be trading in.
Yeah, I think that's right. And as with any standard, the real strength of the standard is the consistency across all products of a type and indeed all markets as well, as you say, Anne. And as with any other type of standard, whether they're talking BS or EN standards or anything else, in order to achieve that level of governance, there's always going to be some time lag to ensure that everything goes through a process so that we do maintain the integrity in the long term.
Yeah, okay, got it. And I think we've just probably got time for one last question, which is, do we know of an ETIM link to Relux or Dialux? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with those. I don't know if they're systems or suppliers. Can you answer that question, Richard?
I probably need a bit more information.
So that's maybe that's one from Andrew Gooding. Andrew, maybe we can take this offline, and if you could give us a call after this webinar, and we'll try and sort that out for you. And unless, I think we've got one more question coming in, and we'll try and take that. I think Stuart Eglin, if you formulated your question, Stuart, and we'll try and take that. They are both lighting design packages. I think we need, okay, thanks, Stuart. I think probably if Andrew could give us a call, and if Stuart, if you're interested as well.
We've come across a link to a system called LumiSpec, which might be something to do with one of those. I'm not sure. Okay,
all right. And we've got maybe one last question squeaked in. EData, can you provide details relating to this platform for manufacturer distributors and to the electrical wholesale? Can you provide details relating to this platform for manufacturing distributors? Well, we can. Yes, we can tell you all about EData, Mark. If you would like to give us a call after this, we can go through it with you and we can explain in more detail how it works. I think, to be honest with now, we're going up to 3 o'clock. We thought we'd give it an hour, and hopefully we've answered a lot of your questions. I hope that you found this useful, and we're just going to ask you, just don't disappear just yet. A couple of things to remind you of. You will be sent a recording of this, so it will be available to relook at, but we would like to know if you would like us to run it again. You're very welcome to join us again. but we'd like to know if it would be useful for other people in your organisation. So I'm just going to click to the next slide, and I think Kira, sorry, that's just, those are our contact details. So just before we put up the survey, this is how you get hold of us. You can telephone the EDA, you can email us at info@etim-uk.co.uk. We have a dedicated website if you haven't found your way there for ETIM, and there is an ETIM UK LinkedIn company page. So I hope you'll find that, engage with it and follow us, because that's where we're really trying to get a critical mass of people who are interested in the all-important strategic subject of data. And now I'm going to ask Kira, I think she's just going to put up the quick survey, which is just a yes or no. Would you like us to repeat this for you or others in your organisation? If you could answer yes, that would be a great help, or no, we have completely understood everything. So if you could just, before you disappear, just fill in that question, just one click of a mouse is all it will take, and then we'll look at that information. And if you would like us to run it again, for you and for others in your organisation, we'd be happy to do so. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Richard, thank you to Kira, thank you to Javier, who's answered some questions, and to Rose, who's also working behind the scenes to help make this webinar a success. So please don't disappear till you've filled in the survey, but thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on the other side. Please give us a call if we can help further. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.